Oh, welcome back. This is Debbie with Light Up Your Worth. I'm so excited that you're here. And because I am so excited, I can barely stay still in my chair. I'm almost dancing. And if you know me, I'm a dancer. I like to move around. Well, you get to know me and you know that I'm a dancer. So I am bringing one of my most soulful, wonderful friends today, and her name is Alora. And Alora and I met about 13 years ago. I was I had relocated back to my hometown, San Jose, California, after being out in Colorado. And so coming back to my hometown, I had decided coming back that I was going to recreate myself in where I was from. And I was going to leave behind the stories and I was going to find my people because when I lived in Colorado, I was able to connect with myself. And so I was moving farther along in my story of who I wanted to be. And so what happened is I went to had read about this, a little workshop that was happening, and lo and behold, there is Alora. And I have the most magical evening. I can still remember the journey she took us on and the talking stick and almost being like a different kind of peace than I could ever explain. And it was different. What was so different about it was that I knew that this was real. It was memories that were flooding back into me. And it just brought me again closer and closer to myself. And so my heart was just so wide open. And I didn't know who this mystical lady was, but I just knew she needed to be in my life. And so we've gone in and out of our lives with life. And so what I'd like you to do, like to do is have you meet who I think is just this magical, delightful friend of mine. And she's so freaking funny too. So Laura,
No pressure, right?
no,
No pressure.
no pressure to be funny. Prepare everybody. There's going to be a lot of giggles because
Hello.
we laugh.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Hello. I'm Alora. And weren't we, Debbie, we were drawn together by the same person
Hmm.
who had felt called at the time to bring forward different mystics and metaphysics teachings and stuff. And I don't know how we met. It was like she saw me and she says, "You need to do a workshop." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I did a workshop, and there you were. And what a great time that was. Yeah.
That was. And then there was other, we've had multiple journeys that I would come over and lay on the floor and do the talking stick. And that's my first experience with the talking stick. And and then we went off to a retreat together and I burned their ears off. Just her and our other friend. Just I don't think I stopped non-talk, like non-stop because I was just so excited and the energy was so like unicorny magical. Like
That's
it
right.
was
You went on that retreat.
sparkly. Yes, and it was like the best retreat.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
It was just such a wonderful experience.
It was
And
just I mean, these are good memories. I was just talking to you before we hit the record button about how I have 3 kids now, and it was like I had one kid, and then 4 years later another kid, and then 6 years later another kid. So I felt like I went down into that whole parenting not even just more than the parenting bubble, that energy bubble where you've got somebody else really in your space, your energy space, and then
mhm.
came back out, started doing more work again, then went back in. And now that my youngest is old enough, I feel like I'm back in that space that we experienced in that retreat where it's like everything is wide open now.
Right? Like it is, and it is so divinely timed. I think that last year when us, along with the rest of the world, went into some life experiences, right? Like people stop and reflected, and then that there's no mistake that you're being called now to show up even more fully in a whole other higher vibration as I have been called to come out of my spiritual closet and to be able to connect so many people with all of these, delightful people like you. So I am so excited that you're here.
Yeah,
Like I
well,
can hardly contain myself.
I had a huge shift too when we went into quarantine because as much as I'm like trained shamanic practitioner, did like official psychic readings for years and like did all this stuff and was facilitating all of these healing circles and energy healings. I was always sort of me passing on messages from the guides. But when I realized it was time for me to get back in my work, I said, I really want to take this to the next level. I want to be able to really help people and have my energy be intact, right? To not feel drained. I want to be able to get up from a session and go out and be with my kids, and those types of things. So what is the modality that would best serve that, right? What's the modality that is, in the sweet spot? And they said, well, you're going to trance channel. And I was like, no way, that's too weird. I was like, I'm not doing it. And then I thought, well, here's what I'll do. I'll try it. And so I gathered a group of people who knew me over the years. And I said, just get on the phone with me one-on-one. I did like, I don't know how many sessions I did. I just gave them away for like weeks just to figure out, am I making this up? Am I any good at this? Like, does this, help you? Is it something that's good for me? It turned out to be wonderful all around, and I'm still doing it, but I'm still giggling at how I just thought, no, I'll do all that, but that one thing, no way.
They call you out. That's what they do, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're a little uncomfortable there. Okay,
Well, you
let's
ask,
have
you
you
say,
get
I'm ready
into
to
it.
take it to the next level. They go, well,
Hmm. Here
are
you
you?
go.
Maybe not. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Here I have this podcast now with, okay, you're going to step out of your spiritual closet and help those, and let's just go really loud on blast and do a podcast.
Well, I listened to your inaugural episode, your first episode of your podcast, and I loved your snippet where you said, and everybody already knew. I was trying to hide the fact that I was different, and everybody already knew. I remember specifically a conversation I had. I reconnected with somebody that I was close with in high school, and then we drifted apart, and then I think Facebook brought us back together. And I admitted to her, okay, so just so you know, I do all this stuff. And she was like, yeah. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, always known that. I was like, in high school, I tried so hard. I tried so hard to hide it. Can't be hidden, really. Really. So if you think you're hiding it,
Yeah.
not hiding it. I mean, it's good to not bring it up with people who don't want to talk about it. And you don't need to talk about it with them, because you don't need to go into that type of conversation with folks who aren't supportive about it. But if anybody is really looking, they already know.
Right. Yeah, you just have to be around the right people. Your people are like, oh
Your
yeah,
people,
we already knew.
yeah,
We already knew, like,
your
you're a
people are
little
already like,
something.
yeah.
Right.
Just waiting for her to like bring it up.
I
That's
know,
funny.
right? Like it just happens. So I want to know, how did this journey start? Like, how did you go from where you were hiding it so much
Right.
way back
To
to the
not hide it.
person to not hiding it? Like, and I know you did all this incredible work.
It was, what happened? I did the thing that I think a lot of people can relate to. I really tried to live life the way I was taught. By the time I was in my 20s, I had a bachelor's, I had a master's in different things, education and theater. But then I went and got this internet job, and I was making, this was the 90s because I'm older, and I was making all of this money, and I was traveling the world, and I was an international relationship manager at one point, and I had all this living in LA, and I had money and stock options, and I had all the things, right? And I was not having good relationships, and I was still feeling like something was desperately missing, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then right the night before my 27th birthday, and I'm living in West Hollywood in like a converted garage, right like in West Hollywood, a peregrine falcon crashes through the window, the tiny little window, and leaves a hole in the glass in the shape of a snow angel, and like dies on the floor at the foot of my bed. And I'm like, what is that? So I put it in the trash. And I had talked to somebody who at that point knew a native healer. It was like, you can't do that. That's a sign. You got to take the bird and you got to go bury it. You got to get tobacco. I'm like, what do you mean tobacco? Like, not in a cigarette? What is that? Get some red cloth. I mean, I'm like taking notes. I'm like, okay. And it was like 4 days later, and the guys that lived in the house in front of us had already put all their garbage on top of it. I thought this is going to be, but I took that bird out, and that bird, and this was my very first knowing of something is different. That bird was perfect. It looked exactly like it had when it had passed away. There was nothing wrong with it. It was immaculate. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And so like the dork that I was, who didn't know anything about being outside, really. I mean, a life in theater for me. I'm not saying other people who in theater might not go outside, but not me. Anyway, I didn't even tell anybody where I was going, but it was Thanksgiving and I wasn't visiting family that year. So I go into the mountains and with a shovel and this bird and my ingredients, and I'm trying to chip away by this river and this pool, this beautiful waterfall, bury this bird. North, head bearing north. I don't Bearing it north. I don't even know what I'm doing. And after I'm done, I'm having a snack and I'm sitting there and I hear, I'm not kidding you, Debbie, like it was as if a giant came down and yelled in my ear, "Get out." But it was like this, "Get out." And I start freaking out. I'm like, "Oh, there's nobody there. It's just me." So I'm packing up my snacks and I'm like huffing it back up to the, winding trails next to ravines and drop-offs and things. And as soon as I get back to the part where I could see the parking lot, it goes dark. Because in the mountains, the sun, right, hits the mountain and I didn't think about it. I had no flashlight. I had no jacket. It was November. I might still be down there today if I hadn't have gotten out when I was set. And on the way up, I was hearing the trees. I was hearing things. I was like, what is this? And then it became a 2-year period where I was very frustrated looking for a shaman. I thought somebody's got to help me explain this, right? Every phone number, this again, back before the internet was a big deal. Every phone number I got, every bookstore I went to, they were all no-goes, like wrong numbers. And I finally said to the universe, I said, if you want me to meet a shaman, you do it. Then I had some crazy out-of-body experience, which said move to San Diego. I mean, there's a lot of details, but fast forward, I went from my improv troupe in LA to my improv troupe in San Diego. And that improv troupe leader said, we have a new space and it's kind of creepy. So my Cherokee Iris shaman friend is going to come and do a space clearing. Who wants to go? And I'm like, oh my gosh, me? Like, who'd have thought I'd find it through improv? So I show up, right? And he looks at me and he says, like dead in my eyes, he says, welcome home. And I lost it. I start crying. I'm like, and he's like, hold this drum, anchor the west. I'm like, I'm banging on this drum. I'm here, but I'm hearing, seeing things. And it started this whole shamanic thing. Whereas before, I had psychic experiences when I was little, and nobody told me not to be psychic, but it was clear that the adults in my life found it very disconcerting and upsetting, that I knew more than I was supposed to know. And so nobody said, don't do that. But I stopped doing it. I was about 5. I think something really psychic happened. I said some crazy name that nobody would know, like a very intricate name that nobody knew. And then the news came on and that was the headline. And my family just looked at me and I was like, oh, I guess that's not something we do around here. And I shut that whole down. In retrospect, what I found was that my relationships with dating were so tangled and so messy because I had shut down my intuition. I couldn't navigate things that were very emotional for me. And dating was very emotional. And I had a ton of really crazy experiences. And also when I was in these dating experiences, that's when my psychic stuff would come out. Before I even met this shaman in San Diego, like I was dating a guy at one point. I would think about him. The phone would ring because again, no cell phones. And I'd pick up the phone and he would say, what? Because he could feel me calling him. So I would have these things happen, but they weren't in healthy experiences. It was only when things were difficult that it would come out. And I had set the intent that I want to have this I want this to have my life be easy. Isn't this supposed to be helpful, right? Isn't being psychic supposed to be a good thing, right? And so as it turned out, I had some more experiences. I had this particular shaman do a ceremony with me where he, my guide's like, well, just so I can hear my guides. Like,
Yes.
the point is, after the ceremony, I could see all of my guides and I could hear all of my guides. And for about 25 minutes or so, I think my left side of my brain was turned off. I could see through my hand. I could see the neighbors below me. The veil was gone. I'm here. I'm a lion in Africa. I'm everywhere. I am all things. And I tripped out. I didn't take anything. It was no ingesting of anything. But I tripped out. And ever since then, I have never been the same. So I think that from that point forward, my spiritual journey was very much in the shamanic stuff. And what ended up happening was I did that for a number of years, had a baby, then got immersed in the mommy land and realized I am so empathic. Like, I can feel, you put frequency music on, Debbie, you don't even make it so you can hear it. I can hold that recorder in my hand and I can tell you what frequency it's playing. Not just whether it's on or off, but I can go, oh, this one feels like 639 and this one feels like 444. And that frequency sensitivity is great for doing spiritual stuff, but I couldn't wield it. It was like, I was thinking the Marvel movies, like Cyclops without his without his goggle, right? His glasses on, and just blowing everything up. It's like everywhere I looked, I was like seeing things, and I was like, I have got to put this under control. And I think after my first kid, I don't know if it was postpartum or something, but I got to a point where I had told my guides, go away, right? I don't know how to manage this. And so I didn't talk to them for a couple years, and things got worse and worse and worse for me until I was like face down on the couch. And my husband, who doesn't worry about anything really, looked at me and said, I'm actually worried about you. And then I was like, oh gosh, all right. And I said, there's this cassette tape, because it was back in the day, kids, this cassette tape that a friend gave me, and it was about this thing called the law of attraction. And I was like, this is the last thing that I haven't tried yet. Out of all the things, the last thing I haven't tried. And I said, I'm going to listen to this thing and I'm going to give it a year. And I hated it. I hated it for about 2 years because it told me that it was all my fault. I was like, not my fault. It was my fault. And really what it did was, and then I went into this, and law of attraction teachings, and Abraham was my main teacher for that. I was really the bulk of things for about 15 years while I was working with the kids, because Abraham's really about soothing. And I needed that a lot while I was very sensitive and had all these kids around me, and homeschooling them even. And then I started to realize in a really interesting thing of integration, going all the way back to you, Debbie, talking about this talking stick. This is what my Kero Apache teacher, because that my Shiva, she became my teacher after the initial one. When she says, you're the two-legged, you're the one who asks the land for healing, right? The ancestors aren't just going to do it. And my thought was, I'm not saying it's everybody, this is me. I couldn't quite grasp. If Source knows everything, and if the guides are helpful and they know everything, why do they need us to ask for the land to be healed? And we don't own the land, right? So there was always a part of me that couldn't figure it out. And I realized that law of attraction really is what I was taught in my shamanic training all along. You are creator. Your thoughts matter. You don't pray for rain, you pray rain, right? Your intent is everything. As it is, so it is. Like all of these things. It was just a different language. But Maria grew up on the reservation and she grew up immersed in these teachings. I mean, if you didn't hear voices by the time you were a certain age, they all worried about you. Versus where I grew up was, you tell anybody you're hearing voices, right? They're worried about. Think about that. I mean, that always sticks with me. Think about that. And you go off on your vision quest or your moon quest, whatever it is. And your job is to come back to your people and say, this is what Creator has told me. This is the course of my life. And then they support you on that. It is Creator led. So I went on this big journey, and it was, I don't say slowed down, but I was busy with kids. So it definitely took longer than it would have if I hadn't had, Kids, love my kids, but to come back to be able to say, I understand what you mean when you say, what is your intent? Call on creator, and creator answers. So I found myself now, because you were like, hey, what's your bio, what do you do? I'm like, what do I do? Everything. I think that I am like this. If you took like personal growth and shamanic practitioner and law of attraction and you squish them together, like I'm in the middle of that. I'm in smack dab in the middle of that, because there is a piece that is so often missing in spiritual teachings for people who weren't immersed in it growing up. And that is that piece of, seriously, who's in charge? Am I chasing something my guides are trying to give to me? Am I making it up? But making it up alone doesn't feel right. Well, yes, that's because if it's just your brain, it's not connected. So what is that sweet spot between me deciding, me being led, me leading, them leading? Like, what is that? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about that, because that is the sweet spot of manifestation. And if one of those parts is missing, it doesn't work. Yeah.
Oh, I'm like almost speechless because I, I just, I mean, being able to take and take these three separate things alone, where people can go spend and do a deep dive. Like, some people just do that deep dive into the law of attraction. Some people do the deep dive into personal development. Some people, stay in the realm of the mystical Native American practices. And you're now combining all of them. And I think it resonates, right? I mean, for my brain, coming from corporate America, spending all that time there, right? Like, yeah, I trust, but I also I need some science moved into it. I need something that connects me to where I grew up, right? Where people don't talk about. For me, I didn't receive those messages, right? I would feel things, like, oh my gosh, I could just feel somebody's pain, like, and I didn't understand it at all, right? Just like you, and
Right.
so I still need that connection between, somehow connected, rooted into something I can, like, at least get my brain wrapped around,
Yes.
because I can't
Yes.
leave my brain. It just won't turn off. And I
I
know some people can, right? Like, some people are really can go to the deep end of the pool into some of it, and then others, we need a mix.
Yeah. Well, I found that I think this is true of many people, but I also think people are really highly sensitive. It's like everything's loud. You know what I mean? Like somebody else walks in the room, like it's almost like you can read a book. It's like, and here, it's like the trailer. In walks this person who went through something today that was upsetting to them. Images of a parental unit are carrying them around, and some deep despair about money. And you could feel it, like, and then up, the dog is right looking for attention. And every time it's like you turn around, right? Even if you can't tell what it is, it's like it's these constant loudspeakers. So a lot of people said, how do you see so clearly? Well, I didn't see so clearly. I was so determined. The cool thing is this improv person that I met, that ceremony, became my spiritual bestie. And she had something like I had, she was like, the Catholic lawyer had an awakening. With the birth of her second child, during the birth process, she woke up psychic. She was like, right? What happened to me? It was like, and I was like the Episcopal girl from the internet, right? Hearing voices. And so we came together and we did that thing that you are doing, which I love. We banded together so that we weren't alone and we didn't feel, well, if we were crazy, at least we were crazy together, right? That's what we
Right.
would say to each other.
That's
But
right.
being alone in this journey is rough. It is so rough. And so my initial teacher, he said, he taught me how to do a shamanic journey. and here's the sage, and here's the drum beats on a CD, and you will lie down every day for 20 minutes. You will set your intent. You will go on a journey. You will let the visions come. You will start off picturing something, and then when you're no longer picturing and it comes to you, that's the journey. You will practice that. And that's the key. Practice. When does the thing that you're picturing turn into something that you're receiving? Are you making it, or are you receiving it? Are you thinking it, or is it an inspired thought? And I did that, and I'm not kidding you, and I'm usually not very steady, every day for a year, probably without few exceptions. And I would write down my journey, and then my friend did the same thing, and then we would compare notes. So we would call each other. We would message, what do you think about this? And then get this. This is what really sealed it for me. We would sometimes lay down on the floor together. We would we would hold hands, and we would go into journey together. And then when we would come out, we would write, before we talked, we would write what we saw and experienced, and then we would compare notes, and we would go on the same journey. Like, we would meet some of the same guides who would give us some of the same names. We would visit some of the same places. And then some, not all the images were the same, but a lot of them were, oh, I saw you here, like flying here. And we're like, oh, and I saw you on the cliff. Yeah. And I was on the cliff and I saw you here. And we had all of these things over and over and over again. And over time, we began to trust it enough to let our guides train us. And at that time, we hadn't met my Karapachi, Shima, that means auntie, yet. But looking back, my guides wouldn't let me read any books on it. Let me. They don't tie your hands down. I could have read the books, but I said, oh, let me read this book on shaman. No, we don't advise that. It's like, okay. So my guides trained me, and I thought, oh man, I'm really half-assing this. Like, I'm not getting the real. And then when I met Maria, she was like, oh, good, spirit trained, that's excellent. And it was later that I started reading and getting the training from the books. The guides were like, sure, read them now. I was like, you taught me all of this. They're like, yes, we did. And I was like, holy moly, like, you really, right? So source trained. So there was another level of really letting myself get in it. So people are like, how are you so psychic? It's like, well, if you really want to get good at interpreting vibration, which, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to practice. And you got to understand, and this is the thing, Debbie, that I love. We are all unique interpreters. When I'm channeling anything. There's no new thoughts. I'm not channeling anything new. It's just my version, right? My energy, my thing translating, because you and I could be looking at the exact same frequency, the exact same energy. And I'll say, look, right? Look, it's Mama Earth. And you'll say, look, it's an angel. It's the same stuff, but based on the symbology that speaks to us, so it's just like you're interpreting. There's different I have a degree in literature, English literature. You'll have a poem translated into different languages, and people will say, oh, I love this poem's translation, or, oh, I love this poem's translation in this language. Same poem. We are all the translators of the poem of source. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Thank you guys for bringing that through to her. I love that analogy of the poem being translated. Uh, I- like how we all see and sense, and then we have the whole life experiences that lead us there. And so when you think about flow, being in flow, right? Like I think about flow is that I've decided that I was going to really step out strong into my spiritual closet. Not only am I bringing together people through the podcast, but I'm doing the membership and giving people a safe place, this community of being able to explore and meet different people who are real. Because when you're first starting, you don't know, right? You don't know how to tell. You don't know, like, you know, have they been doing it since yesterday? Did they just go and get there? Like, I'm a Reiki master, right? So when I was taught Reiki, I was taught that you get your first attunement, you do level one, and then you wait. You don't go rush and do a weekend of one and two and three. Like, you need to let the energy pick up, because you're going to have all this stuff that you're going to need to process through and heal, and then eventually, you get your Reiki master, right? It wasn't like fast track, like People do. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, right? Because that might work for some people and the energies have shifted now. So, that could be right for somebody. But in trying to really listen to our own intuition, totally lost my train of thought here. So I just get all caught up.
Like, woo!
I'm like, okay. See,
Well,
I'm
yeah,
starting.
you're creating a safe space. You're like, do these people know what they're doing, right? Do these
Right.
people,
Yeah,
well,
exactly. That was
yeah.
the point. Thanks for anchoring me back down. See, that's what happens. I'm like, I get like there's a lot of energy running. So when somebody's
Yeah.
listening to this, they might be able to feel it because what happens as we talk, our energies, because we're so in sync, it's getting warm. Like I am warm. My brain is like it's getting lifted up into all of these thoughts, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go back and listen to what we say because I'm not going to remember anything,
There are like guides
right?
everywhere. They're
And
always everywhere, but they're like, you can like really tune into them. I think the thing that I really learned too, and I mean, we talked about, I'm older now, and I think that my biggest challenge was taking a spiritual principle and laying it atop the way that I was taught to move through life. It didn't work because there's judgment, right? There's, you know, I said, they said, right and wrong and all of those things. And when you really get into elevated into, say elevate, but it really is when you raise your vibration into one of having a source led life, you don't really pick sides anymore. You say what's right for me, what feels right. I'm saying don't pick sides. It goes like this: if you're feeling judgment about something, you're not connected to source. You can't feel judgment and feel connected to source at the same time. You can't feel hate and feel connected to source at the same time. You can't feel fear and be connected to source. You can only feel one thing at a time. So when you're connected, you'll feel peace, you'll feel love, you'll feel joy, you feel those things. And when you're thinking thoughts and you still feel those ways, those thoughts are ones that are in alignment with that state. And you start to expand that state in your life. It doesn't mean there aren't times when you're angry or feeling judgy. I was telling you, said, how are you? And I said, oh, I went through. They're fewer and farther between now. They really are. I would say
right,
they're much fewer and farther between. And you never want to eradicate having bad moods ever, because you still need life experience, right? But not very often. I was so mad. For a couple of days I was mad because I had seen a bunch of patterns that I had put into place that I didn't like, and I started kicking them around. I was like, we're making changes. And then I popped onto the other side because it was what I call it was I say progressive anger. What's that when it's helpful anger? I was productive anger. That's it. I said, I'm angry, but let's have this be productive anger. What is this showing me that I want to change? How is this galvanizing me into action? And then of course, don't put any commitments into place. Don't make new rules. Don't change anything until you've come out of this anger and you get back into a state of calm, and then you can make decisions from there. But what is it that you can see that needs to go? And so I went through this productive angry phase. But the thing is that you realize that if somebody's on the internet and they're saying something not nice, they're disconnected. If they're saying something helpful, even if they're giving feedback, like, this would be nice if it were changed, right? And there, you can tell if they're source led or not. And you get out of the paradigm of is it fair to is it is it guided? Is it in alignment? The kids are sometimes like, you don't just divvy things up fairly. I go, no, I can't. I feel vibration. I divvy it up the way I feel called. It's always right. It's not always what somebody would say is equal three parts for equal three kids, but they always go, yeah, we can't argue with you. This was the way it should have been. This feels right. And so you get out of this sense of fair and you get into this sense of alignment. And that, I think, takes time. It takes time to unwind. If you've been living a life, right, of keeping a list of what people have done to you and what you've done, like what's fair, and you get into this highest good life, it takes time to change that. And I think that people who are new, my message for new practitioners is, if your heart is in the right place, if you really are wanting to help somebody and you've still got issues, we all have issues. No matter how long we've been doing this, we are all still working on our stuff. You will find the people, and the people will come to you who will benefit from you now, And as you grow and evolve in your practice, some of those people will find new people and new people will come to you. But no matter where you are, there is a circle around you of people who will benefit from the light that you have now. The light that you have now is of benefit now. Don't wait until you're what? Complete? What is that? Right?
When you're
Dead? Right?
complete, yeah,
Right?
that's when
Complete
you're
dead?
dead, right?
Because
The
the
journey's
guides would
over.
say that doesn't happen anyway because you're still going to evolve in the non-physical. There is no complete. You can't, don't wait. Wait till it's right for you, but don't wait for this doneness. I had a client, I mean, out of the blue. He said, some guy was like, emailed me, I just found your cassette tape, because it was a long time ago, kids, from like how many like decade ago,
Yeah.
decade 14 year, I don't know how many long year, at least 14 years ago, 16 years ago, maybe at this point. I said, wow, if I would have listened to what you said then, where my life would be now. And I was so grateful for them reaching out and saying that to me, because I had asked my guides this very same question. I've changed so much. Was I helpful then? I've learned so much now. I was so new then. Was I helpful then? And they were like, yes, yes, you were. And to have that come back, I was like, yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think everybody is getting these messages. And maybe people who are new to spirituality, like this is their first, they've just stumbled onto this podcast right now. They have no idea what we're talking about, but they feel they're like, what's source, right? Like, what's a cassette tape, right?
Yeah, that's probably true too.
I'm
What?
stuck on cassette tape or CD.
It
You
used to
can
be a
Google those,
CD.
right? It wasn't that long ago, right? At least it doesn't feel that way. But I think last year really allowed people to slow down and like take away some of the noise, and now they can hear. They feel this something's missing, something's calling them to step into something bigger. So they're curious, and now they're coming out and they listen to this podcast with us, going, "What are you talking about?" And what would you tell them?
What would I tell them about what's going on?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
trust. What is intuition? What's intuition to you? If they're trying to figure out what that is, because that's a more common term, right? Intuition.
I think I really do feel that the scientific part of it is, right, is that every emotion has a vibration, right? Like you can put nodes on people's heads, right? And you can hook it up to the machine in the scientist's lab and you can have them think thoughts and it can tell you, right? Right. And things have vibrations, vibrational frequencies, right? Music is tuned to a frequency, all those types of things. And you can, people talk about, oh, they have such a high vibe. What does that mean? Well, they're feeling happy. Oh, it's such a downer. What is that? Well, it's a low vibe, right? And the truth is that the universe doesn't have mouths to talk. They don't have brains, right? Brains and mouths are a human thing, and so we communicate in that type of a language. Now we're moving into more telepathic stuff, which the internet is like the beginnings of, right? People are like, would it be
Hmm.
nice if we could talk to each other telepathically? Well, we can't yet, but hey, somebody's like, what if we had this thing called the internet, right? So now, right, you don't even think twice about contacting your friend overseas. Whereas when I was growing up, it was like bazillion dollars a minute on the phone if you had their
Hmm.
number. So one of the things that to know about intuition is we're constantly immersed in vibrations. We're constantly immersed in this. And your source, our source, everybody's source is a vibration, the vibration of love. And source wants to know itself. So there are things that source is, and one of them is your soul. Call it your inner being, call it your inner self, your soul. Well, your soul has a vibration. And you know what that vibration is? That vibration is a culmination, which means a mix, a beautiful weave of everything that you've ever wanted, everything that has ever inspired you in this lifetime and others. Your soul has that now too, in addition to its original structure, its original vibration, right? Its original. It is now expanded with all of those things, and it can't help but vibrate, which means send out that signal. And if you calm your mind, right, and ask for received thoughts, right? right? If you calm your focus and say, what is my soul thinking right now? You can begin to, your body might open up, you might lean in, your eyes might get wider, you might feel more relaxed, but you start to attune, which means like two tuning rods, bing, you start to attune to that vibration. And here's the thing, how do you really communicate with your soul? You do it thought by thought. And if I was going to tell any new person, it goes like this. Your thoughts move too fast to pay attention to them clearly. So you get out a piece of paper. You get out a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and you write down a thought. Not a question, a thought, which is like, my soul loves me. And then you pay attention to how you feel when you make that statement. My soul loves me. Feels good. That is your soul saying yes. My soul is mad at me. Doesn't feel good. Now, this is the biggest thing about intuition when I do psychic training with people, is if you make a statement that stinks, right? And you don't feel good, you think that means yes. You think my soul is mad at me and I feel bad when I say that. So that means my soul is mad at me, right? Because that feels bad. It's exactly the opposite. That's the biggest twist right there. If you could, anybody can get that going, it'll change just about everything. It means your soul doesn't agree. It's like the hotter or colder game. Hot, hot, cold, cold. My soul doesn't. Well, what does my soul agree with? So let me write down thoughts. And so I can, and then how do I feel about them? And then piece it little and piece it 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 together. And then you learn how to expand that skill set into your life. So just like learning how to ride a bike, so great. Now you don't even think about it. You just hop on it and go wherever you want to go. You go out in life and you're more aware of your thoughts and which ones your soul is saying yes to and no to. And when you find yourself out of sync, take a break, recalibrate, and go back out. And the biggest thing that you do, which you've already said, I decided. You decide to feel good. You decide to look for things that please you. You decide to come back from that party feeling rejuvenated. Oh, back when we had parties, you
Yeah.
decide, right? You choose. You choose what to focus on. And the reason why you do that is because we're here on this planet to learn how to focus. There is no time and space. There is an illusion, but it's an illusion that we have all agreed to live in on this planet, to manifest on this planet, to live in this illusion of time and space so that we would have the benefit of it to focus. Because in non-physical, the minute you think of something, there it is. Well, here, it doesn't. It takes time. And that time makes you have to pay attention. And that pay attention is training ground for your soul. It's a focusing thing, and it's also fun. And it's also fun here.
Isn't it fun?
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, like very super practical with my intuition. I love when people are like, well, how does your gut feel? Right? Like, how does your head hurt? Are you getting headaches? Are you getting some type of disease? But my most favorite, and it's, I get into the car and I'll be, talking out loud. Hey, I'm really trying to figure out, and I'll just ask the questions up to my spirit team. And then, I'm a music lover, so I listen to all different types of music, and bam, a song comes on, and I'm like, okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just thanks. Thanks. Okay, I got it. That's what I needed to hear. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then learning how to trust it. Like it's
That's the
so,
thing.
I have a tendency to simplify things for myself because I need something practical, right? Like I can get lost sometimes thinking about, I just start floating away because I'm this air sign. So I like float away. And then I have to come back down and ground myself. And when I'm not grounded, when I don't recalibrate, is when I don't listen to it, don't listen to that feeling that my body gives me, the decision always ends up coming into a lesson learned, a failure, right? An experience that apparently I needed to learn again or learn right? Like it just re-shows up again. Or
It's like they say, does that hurt? Don't do that.
yeah,
don't
oh look, you just did it again.
don't do that again.
Yeah, that oven's hot. Don't touch it. And you're like, is it really still?
Is
Oh,
it
it
still
is. It's
hot?
still
How
hot.
hot is
Yeah,
it?
right.
That's why I said, in order to live a life where you're led by your intuition, you have to stop being curious about how bad would have been. If your intuition tells you to go down this road and take this highway instead of the one you normally take, right? Well, sometimes you're going to say nah, and you're going to take that other road that you normally take, and you're going to get stuck in a traffic jam, in which case you can say, oh, well, this is why I was guided in the other direction. And after a while, by paying attention to when you choose to ignore when you can tell you're like nah, and I wrote it down. There was a year or more where I would jot down things I thought. I was like, oh, I have this sense about this, or I have this sense about that. And then I would come back and sort of check my work, because I was really wanting to make sure I was clear for clients, which encouraged me to be, I think, better than I would have been maybe if I was just doing it for me. I really wanted it to be right. And then of course I had kids. I really wanted to have my intuition be clear. It's a big decision sometimes when you have kids, like how to navigate that. And so I said, oh my gosh, I have to stop being curious about, right? About what would have happened. And the guides were like, yes. And that was really hard because, sometimes we're trained. It's, you know what I mean? Like to look at the drama, right? Look at the drama. Where's the drama? Everybody talks about the drama, and somebody's like, how was your day? And I don't have any drama to add to the conversation. Do I look annoying because I'm so happy and I had a great day? Like, right? I had to wean myself out of drama seeking for all sorts of reasons. The guides were just talking about in a channeling recently about how there's some very real, and you're talking about this too, there's some very real loneliness that can happen when you shift into a new paradigm. Because if folks that you were with before aren't there now, you're in the in between, and you're building a community that works in two ways. New people are coming to you, and the people that you didn't know were on the edge or already doing this are revealing themselves to you. But it's all a revelation. Either the new ones are coming and being revealed, or things are transformation and being revealed. But you're in that moment where you're like, I have just, right, gotten rid of everything that I've known, admitting, just choosing to be happy no matter what, choosing to do this, whatever, living in a new way, moving through life differently. I don't know if this is going to work. And so it is that challenge. So how do you step through that? And that one is knowing that when you're connected to source, you never feel lonely. Whether you're meditating, or you're in nature, or you're hugging your dog or your cat, or you're listening to that song which brings it back to you, whatever it is, whatever creator, source, God, whatever that feeling is to you, to tell your mind, hey, remember, when we're connected to that, loneliness isn't even on the table. It's not even an option.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. Oh,
And
like that
so,
was a big wind that just came through me.
yeah,
Ooh, yeah,
so
yeah.
you have to. And that is, there's a parable, is saying, a proverb, I think it's a proverb, about a woman giving birth, and the community can lead her to the bridge, and the community can welcome her on the other side, but she has to cross that bridge alone, right? And it's that sort of same thing. You have to, if you're going to really shift into a source-led life, an intuitive-led life, which is, if it's not the way your society is or has been, or you've been raised, there's that moment. It's leaping before the net will appear, is what people normally say. But my guides are saying there's always a net. You already are surrounded. The net, the grid, the universe, source, there's always a net around you. There's a grid of energy. And what you're being asked to do is to tune into that first, not so that you can get the new community, but so that from that place of being connected, the community that is right for you can find you, and you can find them. And that is the step. So when people say, how did you get into all this? I would say, well, looking back, I took a leap of faith with one friend for a year to journey every day. And a lot of times it scared the crap out of me. And I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I didn't know what I was seeing. And my life was changing. And I did it anyway until I built the ability to tell what mode I was in: receiving, dream, in between the dream, thinking, and being able to shift gears just like on a car, right? That's normal in cultures. Some cultures, it's normal in some places, but it's not normal in a lot of, like, the Western world for sure, right? And it is that shifting gears that is reawakening. And the internet is really forcing its hand because people are just getting inundated. And the changes in the world, people are just getting inundated. And they have to choose. They have to choose. Am I going to flow with what was the, not really a flow, but the, herky jerky trying to make it work or am I going to join this new way of living? Right? This new way of perceiving, this new way of receiving. And there's a vast difference, and you can tell. And sometimes people are surprised at who makes the leap into which side, like who's on which side. Sometimes people you thought would be on the side of, right, source led are not. They're in fear. And some of the fear people are like, whoop, well, never mind, I'm going to do source. No judgment about it, because there's all evolution, right? We're all, right, the vast scheme of things, we're all in it together. We really are. But there's this shift now that's happening, and you have to pick your side. If you're listening to this, you already know. You already know. You
Right?
already know.
Yeah, if they're still here listening, then you're a part of us, peeps. Like you're one of our peeps. Just so you know, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And once you start acknowledging it, you will meet other peeps. You'll get a different vibe, a different feeling of like it feels safe. Like to kind of like start it out a little higher about something. Oh, and whatever it is that you're experiencing, and then you're like, okay, then it can evolve, right? Like some of those relationships take off, right? I think of all the people I met the same time I met you, and there's you and our mutual friend, and there was a couple others, but some of them have actually had passed away, right? Around that same time frame. And so there was a few people who I just really felt super connected with at a level that I was like, oh, like coming home, like that feeling of being surrounded by love. And I remember somebody telling me we went to a baseball game. So here's the other myth I think that people think, right? That we don't do normal things, right? Oh, I'm either spiritual, right? And all I do is meditate and I'm this old version of this hippie, right? But we're all over the place. We're everywhere, right? Like I love live music. I love rock concerts.
Oh
I like
yeah.
I
We're
like
at your
water,
Costco.
right? Right? We're everywhere. We're like that. We do normal things, right? And I remember going to a baseball game and in San Jose in the minors, right? And that's what like the first time I met this new group, and I was so terrified. I was like, "Wow, are they gonna be like?" I had this preconceived notion of how are these people gonna be? Are they gonna be all like way woo? Like, do they have, and this is the language I would use, do they have real jobs? I mean, how do they function in the world if they don't, right? Like, this is the mindset that I came into because it was still so new, right? It's still new because it was so, the ups and the flows of believing it and not believing it. And so I remember going to this game and I'm like, uh, one of the people there I did become friends with, really good friends, and he was a super sweetheart of a guy, and he introduced me to Paradic healing, and I
Mhm.
remember going to like Sunny's conference room and learning about that, and it was so fascinating. And he was a really great teacher and um, and yet he was normal, right? He went back out into the world and had a real job, like a marketing job, right? And then he would come and he would do all this healing, and then he, he transitioned, I think within about 2 years after I met him. And now I know why, right? Like why some of these really amazing people have transitioned over, because now we can reach out and they're over there. And
Right.
they knew what was coming and they had already decided to go over there. So,
I
um,
think I know here. Yes.
you know what I'm talking about?
I think I do.
Tall. He was tall.
Yes. Yes. He was
He like,
one. Yes.
oh, he was
Yes.
wonderful,
Yeah,
right?
he
Like,
had an energy. You would have a conversation with him and it never left you. I still can call up, like I'm standing in the parking lot talking to him as if it's, and well, here he is,
yeah,
like, hey, here he is. So
yeah.
the thing too that's interesting is that
KB.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
his name, right?
Hey, exactly.
KB,
Yeah, babe. He's like, what's
what
up,
brought
girls?
you in?
What's up? Oh, it's such a great, yeah. I was like, wait a minute. Because as you're talking, I was like, I feel this energy. And I think the thing too that's really, really good to know is are you still in a place where you're learning how to trust other people? Right? Or are you in a place where you're learning to trust source? Like, are to be honest with yourself and to say, I remember when I really opened up to some girlfriends in San Diego Circle, I remember them all just holding me. I was crying because I had had a lot of situations in the past where girls just weren't so nice. There was a lot of drama and there was a lot of difficulty. And I had some, and I just found it easier to play Dungeons and Dragons with my dude friends, and do all that type of stuff. So, to open up really and to be vulnerable with a group of women, there was a huge healing that happened there. And they just they held me and they said, we got you. So there are these steps, uh, that to be honest with where you are in the process so that you can say, give me the people, the resources, the books, the podcast, the things that will help me through this stage. And it is like this. The stages are like this. Do I choose to live a source-led life? Okay, I do. Is there anything that's preventing me from living a source-led life now that I could think of? Well, maybe I have some trauma from this or had some bad experience with that. Great. Can I reframe that? Can I create a new relationship with that topic? Oh, what? Yeah, can I create a new relationship with that topic? Oh, and this is the mind thing. And Debbie, this is what I really got from Law of Attraction. I learned that I'm talking about me, I had a very undisciplined mind. And um, I would say, my husband would be like, not logically based. I'm not a logically based person. I'm a feeling based person, right? Really, really feeling based person. I'm not saying you can't be both. I'm saying I am. And so my mind would just follow wherever my emotions were going. And the law of attraction training was really like, no, you actually get to pick your thoughts. I said, what? You get to choose. What? You get to decide what you're focusing on. What? You get to decide what you're thinking. What? And if you think about it long enough, it's going to start to manifest whether you want it or not. What? And so there was this discipline, this mental discipline. And they talk about how the great healers, right? And why were they able to do these great healings? Because they only saw the wholeness. They didn't see the sickness. Well, that takes focus, not just energetic focus. It takes mental focus. It takes mental focus to be able to see beyond what is and to see what it is you're wanting it to be instead. To sit in your financial situation, your relationship situation, your life situation, your health situation, and say, I'm not going to push against what is. It is here. And yet I'm going to see beyond it. I'm going to honor what I need to do today, right? To have my life keep going, right? Like pay those bills or do those things or whatever it is I need to do. But I'm going to discipline myself to see beyond. And instead of picking thoughts that I think I'm supposed to pick, right? Do the things that I think I'm supposed to do to be successful. I'm going to start, even with paper and pencil if I have to, I'm going to start picking thoughts that my soul agrees with. And I know because when I think them, they feel good. And I'm going to start to do life that way. And I'm not going to tell anybody about it if they think it's crazy, because I really don't need anybody to talk me out of it. I don't want to be unsupported in this because the beginning is a very delicate time. I mean, I'll suggest to some people, don't tell anybody about that dream unless you really feel called to. Keep it to yourself until you build that mental perspective enough that it can withstand the wind of anybody who's usually well-meaning. People aren't usually like, I'm going to kill that person's dream. People are real well-meaning. Even in their fear, they're saying, oh no, honey, don't do that because we want you to be safe. Or, oh no, honey, don't do that because I did that and it didn't work out for me. People are genuinely, in general, really well-meaning. So you got to say, I want to protect myself from well-meaning people. Right. And there's this, and there's this process, and there's this shift that's happening. There's the statistics. Now, when I was a psychic, it was you couldn't even say that word without getting in trouble. But now more and more kids in their 20s, I call them kids because I'm older now, the psychic readings are on the rise because they're not finding what they're looking for in the traditional religions. Those folks that are going, I'm not saying religion is bad. I'm saying there's a lot of folks that are moving from, according to the statistics, to the psychic stuff, primarily because what's happening is that with the internet, with the change in the generations that's happening, we're in a cycle. Some call it the fourth turning, some call it the shift into the fifth world. Depends on where you're coming from. We're moving into a whole new cycle, right? And we go through different cycles. There's cycles been clocked from whatever. We're going in a whole different cycle, and people are realizing that the old linear way of thinking, which is this is how it's going, so this is how it should always be going, doesn't work anymore. Linear thinking, if you think that life just continues on its path instead of the seasons come and go, right? A life comes and goes, evolution comes and goes, the cycles of consciousness come, like that we live in these cycles and we cycle through cycles within cycles within cycles, and those cycles, right? And all those things. When you live from a secular perspective, then you believe in the ancestors. You believe in the generations that follow. You believe in the totality and the continuation of all that is. But when you live in a linear land, there's a fear of death because it ends. There's just an ending. We're going on a line and then boom, it's gone. And that fear of death and that fear of ending is driving a lot of the challenges that people are facing. And people are saying there has to be another way. And what's rising up are the people who are saying we don't live that the linear thinking isn't natural. Let's go back to the cycles. Let's go back to living cyclically. Let's go back to living holistically. Let's go back to, right? We can have electricity and we can live with the earth as well. Like we can have it all. Let's and all of it. Let's do it. And when you reach into that, you conquer, you transform a relationship with a topic that is terrorizing societies. And that's the fear of death. Big, heavy topic, but that's just what popped out of me, right? And when you sit with people who don't have that fear in that way, right? Everybody's right. We're all human, but in that way, it's a completely different conversation than with people, right? Who are in the grip of that. And that is a big leap of faith for a lot of folks. And it's happening. It's happening with so many people that it is encroaching on everyone in a good way.
Right? Like, I really think it's not only have you received it, step forward, I have, like, it's time, right? It's the same, almost the same words when we were chatting. Like, it's almost the same words. It is time. So it might be where there's something that's been bubbling up, and now people can't ignore it. They just can't try to keep. You can only watch so much Netflix. I'm sorry. Like, like your body's gonna go numb. You're gonna finally get up from watching Netflix from last year and go, "Is this it?" Right? Like this. There's something within me that knows that I need something, and it is. Where are these people? Why am I sitting next to somebody and feeling completely by myself? And connecting in with their source, learning to trust their source, and then finding their peace that you can have these conversations with. And I'm like digging it, right? Like that's an old word too. People are gonna have to go Google that because I'm older too. You're like, oh my gosh, I could probably talk all night, right? But conscious of time now, though, because I think we've been on a while. But so how now, Alora? Like
Oh, right.
we
Right. We're
what
recording
happened to
this.
that
Oh, time. What
4 hour?
is that
Yeah,
thing? Got it. Got it. Okay. Got it.
like yeah, people are gonna go, wow, that was a 4 hour episode. What happened with those two?
Everything. Everything happened.
Right? Like I just, oh, because I'm feeling, just so connected, and with you, with the universe, with our purposes, and so how can how can people reach you? How, yeah. Well,
All
I'll just
right.
leave it like there, right? Like, how do people
Ah.
reach out to you?
Right.
Because they're like, I want some of that. I want some of
Yeah.
that, like understanding and translating what they know to don't know, right? Like,
Right.
and want this safe container.
Yeah. If you feel drawn to what I'm doing, I am so bad at marketing. Yeah. I am at askalora.com. That's AskALORA.com. Yeah, so right now, I mean, everything's evolving. Right now, I channel my guides named Hale. So I do live weekly broadcasts with Hale, and it's really cool because it's a combination of like information and answering questions if you submit them, and like energy upgrades and like all sorts of manifestation stuff. So
Ooh.
that's really fun. But then I just am launching again women's circles, but they're online. And you know what? People are like, what, online? But I used to do circles in person, and well, now with the quarantine, we're doing them online. And honestly, they are awesome. Like the intent and the sharing, and then like either there's a women's moon lodge where you all go on a journey together, like I was talking about, like me and my friend, we go, so
Mm-hmm.
you go on a group journey together, and there's processing that. So that one is like spiritual awakening. And then Hale is like, we're going to do these intimate Zooms with a group of people where we help them work out their manifestation lines so that they can have alignment in manifesting. So right now those are happening, but I'm always coming up, not coming up, I'm always receiving stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and I think once people are in this, they'll understand more of that is just how it is. Like we shift, we pivot, or we go and we learn some, and then we integrate it in, and it just keeps integrating and integrating as we evolve, and no matter, well, like what you had said, wherever you are now, you are able to help others.
Yeah, I really want to tell all of you folks that are waking up to this, right? Um, like like yeah, do, if you feel called to do the work, but you don't have to make a big deal out of it in a way that where you feel like scared about it. You could offer it to friends, you could just do it for fun, right? You can do it here, you could do it there. Like, don't let anybody pressure you. There's a lot of, oh, you're psychic, you should open up a business. Like, if you want to, you don't have to. You don't have to turn it into a job. You don't have to turn it into a career. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. What you're called to do is what feels good and what feels joyous. And even if you feel scared about it, you're doing it because you really feel called to it, because it still feels joyous even though it's kind of scary. And it's finding that. And then when you have your psychic gifts opening, because I think a lot of people, if you listen to this, you might have had your third eye open up a little bit more now, because the guy's like, wah, 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 wah. You might get messages for people. That's okay. Unless they're asking, right? Unless there's like, duck, because something's like coming in their direction, unless it's like something like that, if they're, don't share. Why? Because the receiving of something is one thing, but the sharing of it is another, and timing is everything, and asking is everything. And so I, I wish somebody would told me this earlier on. Maybe they did, I just couldn't hear it. But you're not denying your gifts, and you're not hurting somebody from not sharing something, right? When they're not asking, because they can't hear it anyway. And so if you go and you're telling people something that they can't hear and they didn't ask for, that's when a lot of the awkward conversations happen. And that's when a lot of fear and doubt can creep in about this path. So to say, my goal is to live a life that I love. My goal is to be connected to source as often as I can be. It doesn't have to be perfect, because I know it won't be, because I also need to have life. contrast, to make decisions. I want to be connected, and I want to be an angel when it is in alignment. So when I feel called and it feels right and somebody's asking and I'm there to answer, I would love to be in more places where I can be a giver of light, right? I want to be in more places where I can be a giver of light. And let yourself begin to practice those types of statements and intent versus there's work to be done. The earth needs my help and people need my help and I have to do it. That's that old way of thinking. That's not how source is calling. That's not what source is saying. That's not what source is even wanting. Source is saying everything is light. Everything is wonderful. And as light attracts light, it's easy and it's effortless. And it will be for you too. And so it is.
So it is. The good thing, you brought up something that I want to make sure that I plug in there too, is that people have to. So I was a leadership coach, right? I was working with the C-suite, and before we would start this relationship of coaching, we set an agreement, a partnership of the expectations were. But the big thing here that translates into this is I had to ask them if they were wanting this. Do they give me permission? Are you coachable? Do you want to be coached? And until we get that permission, especially with this work, we can't just go intruding in on people's energy because we're feeling like, oh, they need to do it. Like, people need to give permission, and to know that we don't give permission to everybody, right? Like, giving permission, you want to kind of hold on to that's your energy. You don't necessarily want people jumping in there, and unless you've asked for it. So we don't want to also just go off and share going, wow, like, I don't know what's going on with your vibe, but
Right, exactly. I
you
have
might
some.
want to go take a vibe bath,
Hey,
right? Like,
lady in the grocery store, lady in the grocery store. I have to tell you something. No, that
where's
won't
my
work.
sage? Where's my sage? Let me sage her. Let me sage her. Like, they would probably go like, oh no, there's something wrong. No, right? Like, and I think we've all met these people along the way, right? And you're like, no, 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 no. So, don't be saging on me. I didn't ask your permission. So please, 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 please honor that. So I think we have to remember that you have to honor people. And that means you really do need to find your peeps, because you need to be able to share those things. Like, I need to share my dream that I had uh last week, right? About when I was like, oh, I wonder if I was connected then. And so what was my dream? This is like 25 years ago dream, 30 years ago, or it was the dream of that time frame, and it showed me what was stuff that never happened. And I was like, oh, you were there. You were there. I just didn't know it. You were there. And what could have been, right? Like, and what I was shown wasn't all that, rainbows and butterflies, I can tell you that. No sparkles were there.
It doesn't always show up with a.
Yeah, yeah, right. So I was like, oh, thankfully you were there, and I knew enough, I guess, to that never happened, right? So it was like, oh, well, that was a nice, thing, flashback, I guess, right, of what could have happened that never did happen, never did manifest into that. So anyway, so thank you so much, Alora. Like, I'm seriously, this could be 3-hour talk for us. So
Is it? I don't. What time
yeah,
is it?
yeah, right.
Well,
So
thank you for having me on your podcast. I am
thank you,
honored that
thank
you
you.
asked me.
Oh, it is just so fun. I love to talk and share and connect, and this is just so divinely guided, and it feels so in purpose. And so what is happening is that all the people, places, and things are all aligning. And so I am so grateful that you are part of this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
and thank you.